the power lives here inside me. If I'm being treated in a way doesn't meet me as I am, that's about you. When I let that happen to me, that's about me. That's my job. It's my job to take care of me. My job to say when you're crossing my boundaries. It's my job to draw a line in the sand and to honor myself.
Hey, you. Thanks for tuning in. Just a quick heads up, this episode is rated R, so expect that there will be some language that you may not want your kids to hear, lots of adult topics, and quite possibly some explicit conversations about sex. This episode is probably not safe for work, though, I guess it depends on where you work.
Hello, Radiant Rebecca.
Hey there, sexy.
Okay.
You have an updated nickname, Sean.
Updated nickname. Okay. Perfect. I love it. So this episode today, I personally got a lot out of because it's an episode on forgiveness.
It is. Forgiveness and breakups.
Forgiveness and breakups. And guess what sexy being has just been through a breakup?
I think just about all of my friends right now have been going through breakups.
I know a couple as well.
Yeah.
I think that's, I don't know, something in the air or something. But
yeah, might be the real pandemic.
Might be, that's probably exactly what it is. Yeah. So this was a timely one for me, and so I'm really glad that you're letting me introduce this here, and I'm excited to talk about it a little bit. It was actually a really fun episode for me to listen to. The episode itself, I thought, was a breakup. And I think everybody's going to understand what I'm talking about when they listen to it in full.
You mean you thought it was a breakup, or you thought it has the same general tones overall, the process? Okay.
That's what I mean. The emotion in the recording goes from anger and rah, 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 and revenge all the way to forgiveness and then even gratitude. And that's what I loved about it, is I was like, oh man, this is it's like experiencing my breakup in 45 minutes.
That is a really quick timeline for a breakup. I'm impressed.
If only that's all it took. Yeah.
Well, after listening to this episode, maybe it will be that much closer to feeling resolved.
I think that is very, very true, because there are questions that I know all of us experience that are answered inside of this episode. Were questions such as, how do we get past the hurt and anger?
That is a big one, especially when there actually was some kind of betrayal or really deep hurt. Like, some breakups are fairly easy to get over. You just recognize, oh, hey, we're not right for each other. See you later. Have a nice life. Maybe we'll meet up for dinner sometime. But some are not. Some are significantly more painful.
Yes. And then along with the hurt is getting to forgiveness. And where does the forgiveness come from? And what does forgiveness mean? I've struggled with that in the past. Does forgiveness, and in fact, you guys talk about this in the episode, does forgiveness mean you absolve them of all responsibility?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a great idea.
And learning what true forgiveness actually means and where it comes from, which you talk about in the episode, I think helps us to get to a clearer definition of that, and therefore get to that spot faster.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up, because resolving someone of responsibility seems like a very childish thing to do. It's important to be able to move forward, but responsibility is sexy. Responsibility means something. And taking away somebody's ability to be responsible, even when they've done stuff that's not very good, I think is not helpful.
Yes. I think you talk in the episode about turning the other cheek. I know I grew up being taught, as the Bible says, to turn the other cheek. If somebody does something wrong to you, forgive them. And then I think one of the apostles says to Christ, he says, up to 7 times? And Christ's like, no, up to 77 times. And so,
wow.
So what, that's where the confusion for me personally kind of lies, is, about what forgiveness means, where it's at, how do I do it? Do I have to do it 77 times? Can I do it 76? what if I get to 78? That sort of thing. So
have I done one too many?
Yeah. So I appreciated that part of this as well. And then the important part for me about forgiveness is how do I release myself from that relationship so that I don't repeat it. I don't bring it into the next one.
Yeah, and not just release yourself from the relationship by saying, oh, we're done, but release yourself from the patterns, right? That's what you're
Exactly.
talking about.
Yeah.
Don't recreate the same pattern in another relationship because nobody likes to step in cow pies twice.
Well, what's exactly? Wow, that's a very Cedra Woolley thing for you to say.
Thanks. I grew up in the country too.
So, and then I've heard that, we've both heard the saying before of I've dated the same person with a different face.
Yes.
You got to let go of it in order to see a different face. Or actually to see a different person.
Yes.
It's always going to be a different face.
Yes, good point.
So this episode is with a lovely, amazing woman named Elle.
Yes, and Elle and I have known each other for a little while. We talk a little bit about our backstory, but some of the things that you should know about Elle is she is a badass. She has been a CEO of big corporations for a very long time, and now she's a Tantra teacher. And she loves to help people connect with their inner power and find their inner power and find it through pleasure. So I thought, who better to have on my show? Oh, and she also took Bodhisattva vows recently, which is pretty cool.
How fun is that? Okay, well, I'm excited to listen to the episode again. Y'all out there in podcast land should be super excited to hear this one. This is a really great one, and I'll see you after the show.
And I hope we answer your questions, Sean.
I hope so too. 45 minutes.
Well, hello there, Elle, and it is so good to see you. Hi.
Hi, Rebecca. Great to see you too. I am delighted to be here, Rebecca. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. This is really neat. I get to introduce you and share a little bit about how we know each other. Everybody, this is Elle Mountain Deer. Full name, Elle Price. We've known each other for almost a year. We met in a shamanic workshop and a class. So we've been taking this ongoing course together all year long. And while we live on opposite sides of the country, we've gotten to be in person a couple of times for some ceremonies, but mainly we've just, connected really intensely over some personal experiences that we both had recently. And I was wondering, do you want to share some of the details of that?
Well, what we're going to talk about is forgiveness, and sometimes I'll talk about revenge too. But I think my story is not as important as the recovery from the story. So it's a typical boy meets girl, girl falls in love, boy hurts girl, girl gets to be victim and has to find her way back. The details I'll share a little bit more about, but they're not important because they're actually from the past, but the journey is still with me to a place of what does open-hearted forgiveness look like when I started at, I hate you. Right? So those are my original thoughts.
I love that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we had such a good connection to begin with. There's this concept of bonding over misery, and neither one of us are the types of people to do that. But even though we had these somewhat miserable experiences and we were able to share and connect with each other over, it wasn't sharing about, oh my God, what an asshole was this person, your person, my person, everything. It was more of, okay, this is something that really matters to me, and how am I going to move forward with this? And that was what we connected over. And I thought that was really unique and beautiful. And that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show and talk about some of the things that we've both learned. And you were generous enough to come and share your experience and to talk about this really vulnerable, difficult heart experience that you'd had. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm remembering that 5-hour car ride we took to Sacred Land. And I was talking about, this goes back 8 months ago, where I was and what was going on. And I was already into healing at that point. The original rawness of the wound was starting to heal. And you said, oh, I would love it if you came on the show and shared this. And I said, I would love that too, but not yet. I'm not fully healed yet. And it's been 8 months since that conversation. And I've been actively involved in what does it take to get me back to the before I was wounded and back in balance again. And I feel really ready to share what the journey was like, and that this miraculous thing that not only did I get back to where I was before, like before I was wounded, but I actually am in a new place beyond where I was before. And I want to share that too, because it's been a strange year and a half, sort of having this journey of healing lead me to new places that I've never been before.
Yeah.
Sort of like
yeah.
that bad things turn into good things.
Yes. And I'm glad that you mentioned that and brought that up that way, because when you said I wanted to get back to who I was before and be healed, I was going to call you on that. I don't really think that is healing or healthy, even to think of how do I get back to being who I was before. That implies that you're broken and that there's something that you need to do to fix. But the reality, which you pulled out here, is that you have grown through these experiences. And now you're a happier, healthier person because of them, not in spite of them.
That is so exactly on point. Not only is it was growth. There may have been some healing in there. And certainly I got a chance to look at some issues from my own family of origin, meaning I called this person in and realized at some point in the healing that he was a lot like my dad. So I adored my dad. So I got to look at, as an adult, some of the woundings from my father that I brought into my life recently. So that was a healing. And I'm quite certain, because that's healed, when I bring in my next love, it won't be a person I need to work that out with, because it's now worked out. So blessings.
That is really good. Is there anything specific that you're willing to share? Something that other people who can maybe connect to?
Yeah, I think I will, but I would like, if it's okay, to talk a little bit about what I mean by forgiveness, and a little bit about revenge too, so that I know we're all on the same page with what I mean by forgiveness, right? So all religions speak about forgiveness, you know, like the Lord's Prayer, which is fundamental in the Christian religion, has 50 words in it, and 2 of them are forgiveness. You know, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. So what we see is that the teachings of forgiveness are key to the teachings of Jesus. We see that also in Buddhism, and we see that in Judaism, with slightly different flavors around it, which I might point to later, certainly. But everybody talks about forgiveness. So what exactly does that, what does that mean? By the way, I also want to say this has been such a warrior's journey for both of us. It requires being brave to let go, and to let go of those hurts. Is that your experience too, that you really need to be brave?
Oh my goodness, yes. And there's a certain amount of courage that's necessary, not just to face the pain, but also to face the pain and to come out of it with a gift or more.
Oh my God. Oh, right on, sister. It's a warrior's journey. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. All religions talk about this, but it's really not clear to me how you do this thing called turn the other cheek, forget. It was unclear. And so when I found it was a journey of my own heart, it was about my bravery. It took my courage, but I got confused. I thought I was letting him off the hook for the nasty things he did. And I got confused in there, and it took me a while to tease that apart and to realize that I was doing it for my own well-being. It had nothing to do with him, and that I was not in any way absolving what he did. Right? There was a difference. I needed to get back to my own balanced, loving heart and stop hating.
I think there's a distinction here that's really important to make. And that the distinction is anger versus outrage.
Rage. Right. So in our teachings, right, in our shamanic path, they talk about anger as being part of pity, feeling sorry for yourself. I'm so angry, and then you tell a story. Blah, 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 blah happens. And you get yourself in that pity victim story. Whereas rage is different. It is a teacher on our path, and rage has no story. It's just like a fire, and it comes through and it burns out everything. And what's left is truth.
Yeah.
Truth is so clear and so beautiful. And I got to see a lot of truth. And Rebecca, honestly, I saw some things about myself where instead of being victim, I participate. This does not, again, change what happened. But I was not totally without my own participation in this, as I saw from truth that I did things that caused him to be unhappy too. So it was a reflection for me about things I've done or do that I don't actually want to do anymore. So I got reflections about him, the situation, and myself. I got a lot of truth.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to hear a specific in a minute, but I wanted to say, for me, the difference between anger and rage, I like that you said anger has a story behind it, but it was groundbreaking for me to realize that rage is a natural, normal emotional response to injustice. And once I figured that out, I realized I had kept myself in this place of anger to stop looking at the injustice. But when I dropped the story and I just let myself have that rage and let that rage burn away everything to see what was underneath, the truth that was underneath was someone was being disrespected majorly. And that was something that I hadn't been able to see because I was stuck with my story about it.
Brilliant. I just want to add one other thing, that as a girl brought up in our society, rage was scary to me. It was too intense and something I think I had learned as a girl growing up, that you don't do anything that intense. And it's not ladylike, or it doesn't go with the pink dress that I was in as a little one.
What a mindfuck, huh?
So, the thing about forgiveness is I thought forgiveness was so, whereas rage feels too fiery, forgiveness felt soft, like we're letting somebody off the hook. And that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness sees wisely. It is not soft. It is not weak. It is not foolish. It does not absolve. And we can say never again, right? And devoting our lives even to that injustice, if it is. But forgiveness is always, always about us and not about them. And that was a big distinction for me. I thought if I stayed angry, I wouldn't let him off the hook. If I forgave him, he was off the hook. And I had to reorganize that thought form and say, when I forgive, it's not about him. He's not off the hook. I'm just freeing myself.
It's interesting. I was shared a poem a couple of years ago as I was going through a pretty bad breakup. And one line in the poem says, forgiveness is giving up all hope of a better past.
Yes. Yes. That was one of the turning points for me in this healing. Because when I was in pity, I kept thinking, well, if only this, if only that, if this. And when I stopped trying to create a new narrative, a new scenario, and went, no, this is it. The past doesn't change. It's in the past. That was freeing. That created a field for me to start healing in. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say that someone listening has got their own problem that they are wishing that they could forgive. Where would you recommend that they start?
Well, I'm not sure. I want to say something about revenge too, because I really like revenge. And then so I'm going to talk about forgiveness, but I'm a New York girl. I like revenge. There's something about that feels satisfying on some level. Like I'm dreaming of all the ways I can get you back. It's like licking honey off the edge of the knife. It's seductive, it's sweet, but it's dangerous. And I did, in all honesty, do that for a while, but felt that I wasn't here. I wasn't enjoying life. I was in the past, remembering all the bad things, and in the future, fantasizing about all the ways I get you back. And I wasn't in this precious moment. And it also became a do loop. So I would fantasize today how I would get you, and tomorrow how I would get you. And the days and the weeks were going on, and there was no resolution. I was stuck inside that. And I realized that was not my path back to wholeness. Although it was satisfying for a little bit.
Right. It does seem like that's a pretty common pattern. How did you recognize for yourself that you were stuck in this loop and nothing was actually changing? Because I know that's been something for me where it is somewhat satisfying to have these thoughts.
It is.
And until you can see it as, oh, this actually isn't good for me, it's pretty challenging to get the energy and the motivation to change something.
True. So you sit in it for as long as you do. And I think some people, I've certainly met people in my life who are still fighting something from years ago. You know, I remember going to an engagement party and meeting the mother of the groom to be, and I was going to take a picture of their family. I had never met the groom side of the family. And And I tried to take a picture of the groom, the father and the mother of the groom to be, and she wouldn't, this woman who was the mother of the groom wouldn't get into the picture because the father, she was divorced from the father. So I said, oh, it sounded so raw. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. When did this happen? And she said 13 years ago. So the rawness and her fight was still going strong and consuming her even on this happy occasion of her son's engagement party. So you can sit in it for a while, but I also noticed that it didn't feel good in my body. It felt like survival. It felt like I was out of balance, like my system wasn't right, and I wasn't my joyous, happy self. So it felt like a part of the pity and the victimization that I have, all of the aspects of being a victim. He did it to me. I'm a victim. First I'm crying, then I'm sad, then I'm getting you back. I'm attacking you back in my fantasies, but it all felt like aspects. At some point, it grew wearisome. Like I really wasn't healing. I was just going through different stages of pity and being a victim. And that's not usually who I am. And that's what we bonded on, is that we're not victims. We don't want to be victims. We want to get what we need to get from this and move on and grow. So I think that was it. I saw there was no freedom. That was part of it. This whole aspect of forgiveness is attached to me to freedom, my own sovereignty, my own beauty, my own balance. And when I was in pity and suffering, I wasn't free. It was running me. So I wanted my freedom back. I was missing it. And I didn't want to suffer anymore, quite frankly, but forgiveness is counterintuitive. I mean, for me anyway, it was counterintuitive. So I had to find my way there. Was that at all how it was for you?
Yeah, I think for me, I did feel, and I still do a fair amount of time, I did feel out of balance and like there was something wrong and like I'm not being my normal self. And I also found that it was really challenging to figure out, like to separate that from everything else going on, from the year of COVID and from the lockdown and the isolation and all of these other things that were all changing at once, like an incredible amount of stressors happening all at once. And then in the middle of it, there is this big open heart wound that I was trying to figure out what to do with. And it was also something that I hadn't experienced like that before. Like I've had major heartbreaks before, but I have never had that experience of knowing so clearly, like, okay, this is someone who I believe I can trust, and then having that backfire so awfully in my face. And so, yeah, I think it was a similar thing, just trying to figure out how to tease apart all of the bits of trauma and see where I needed to start.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I too fell very in love, and there was this beautiful promise of a bright future. It was just magical. I mean, look, there are really real hardships in the world. There's genocide, there's children getting hurt, there's homicide, there's rape, there's violations on a level that you and I are not talking about. So admittedly, in the total scheme of life's betrayal, we didn't deal with that. It's a different journey back to wholeness, but nonetheless, it requires a journey back to wholeness, no matter how awful the violations and the trauma is. So I too, it's just a boy-girl thing again. There was a promise, a hope, a dream, and in COVID, and it wasn't realized. And man treated girl badly and ultimately dumped girl. And that's the story, right? Like, there's a lot of he said, she said, but that's what happened. It happens a lot, but it threw me. I really wanted this to work, you know, and it didn't. And he wasn't nice.
What an asshole.
So, you know, I think forgiveness for me, I can't speak for anyone else. I'm more spiritual than I am religious. And so forgiveness is counterintuitive. And I had to find my way there. I still find it a challenge, but mostly I find it a choice. Like, do I choose it? Do I choose it? Do I choose it? Do I bring myself back to the concept and the behaviors of forgiveness? And so that's been this journey, which we want to talk about a little bit. There's a quote that I love. There's a lot of quotes, but this is ancient. This quote goes back to 300 years before Christ. So it's 300 years BCE, and it's written in Pali, and it's a Buddha quote, and it's from the language of Pali, which predates Sanskrit, which is an ancient language. So it says, hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone. It is the ancient and eternal law, and it's found in the Dharmapaya. So I sat with that for a long time, meaning the solution to my problem of hatred is love. How do I do that when I actually hate you? How do I turn that hate into love and compassion? Clueless. That's where I started. So the first thing I actually did, so I didn't know what to do. So the first thing I did was, somebody said to me, you can't hope for a different future. That same quote that you just quoted. And I went, oh, it isn't going to be any different ever. It is the way it is. Okay. That was a starting place. Then I stopped telling the story of all the shitty things he did. And I realized a few things. I was getting something from telling the story. I was getting attention. I was getting agreement that he was a jerk. I was also being a victim, meaning I was carving that story into the neural networks of my brain that I'm a victim. And I didn't like being a victim. So I stopped telling the story. That was the first thing I did. And I found that I started to gain power. So I realized every time I told the story, I was reinforcing what a victim I was and losing my own power again in the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's also a very relatable thing. I'm sure everybody listening has had experiences like that, where at some point you look at the way that you're interacting with an experience or a person and you realize, at this point, I think this is starting to be my fault now.
I realized I could feel the chemicals in my body that were toxic. You know, whether it's cortisol or I don't know which chemicals, but I could feel that when I told the story, I was releasing stress hormones, and it wasn't making me feel good. And I felt that if I kept telling the story, I was losing out on my life force energy. I was missing out on my joy. I was missing out on my life. So therein lies, it's my fault at this point. I'm doing it to me. So, and I realized this is not a big deal. We've all been neglected. We've all been violated. We've all been abandoned. We've all been betrayed. We live in a world of injustice. It was kind of like, get a grip, you know, get a grip. So, and then I also realized, you know, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You know, I knew he wasn't upset. He had moved on. Then I started to do practices that I learned elsewhere. I read books that became my teachers and my friends. And because it was a boy-girl thing, I read some books on the dark night of the soul. And I read books on women who love too much and some spiritual books. And they became part of the healers, part of my teachers. And I wanted new teachings because I needed to expand into this and get beyond my anger.
Right. When you realize everything that you know has not helped you anymore, you have to go and find new knowledge to help you.
Ah, true thing. Right. Right on, sister. So, read books, stopped telling the stories, did forgiveness ceremonies where I forgave myself for making unwise choices. I forgave myself for believing things when I actually had other data. I forgave myself for lots of things, for all the ways I was bitchy. I gave those things away to trees, and I sat for hours giving things away and asking the trees to make flowers out of the garbage I was giving away. And then when I was finished forgiving myself, believe it or not, I took him on. And I forgave him for being a jerk. I knew he was a jerk. So I forgave myself in the first part for knowing he was a jerk and trusting him, right? I knew he was a jerk. And then I forgave him for being a jerk because I knew he was a jerk before I got engaged with him. So I forgave him for being him and forgave lots of things. And the world started to get more spacious. And I gave away my anger and I gave away my resentment and I gave away until I was empty. I was an empty vessel.
And by giving away, you're meaning letting go of, right? You're not trying to take this stuff in your apartment and take it to Goodwill.
No, but I did. I live across the street from a big park. And I did sit with trees and give it away so that I could give it over to Mother Earth. So I put ceremony around it, Rebecca, so that it would have a certain power to it of letting it go and sitting there and saying to the trees, I give up my anger. I give up my resentment. I give it up. I give it over to you, tree. You take it. You make flowers out of all this mess.
And I just popped in to clarify that, because the whole idea of giveaways for people that aren't Deer Tribe is like, what are you talking about? So I think you've described it pretty well now. I just wanted to clarify that for everyone.
Oh, thank you. It's useful for me to make a ceremony out of things, just a simple ceremony. And the simple ceremony was sitting by a tree and bringing in the power of nature into my little ceremony. And I was doing this, a lot of this healing around Easter time. So it was spring, it was the season of renewal, and I wanted to bring ritual into it and ceremony into it. It's just useful for me as I do healing practices that I want to be powerful for myself. And then I journaled, and in my journaling, I talked about where I wanted to go with this healing, what I imagined was possible for me out of on the other side of this. And I imagined my heart being opened. I imagined healing. I imagined bringing in a new partner. I imagined being a wise woman out of this, like opening my heart, opening my wisdom. And I just journaled about what was possible as another one of my practices. And I did some Buddhist meditation. So that was kind of the journey. But then there was something else. So when it got spacious, something else occurred to me, which was new. And that newness was, although these were spiritual practices, I never felt like I had really given it over to spirit. It was me doing this work rather than giving it over to spirit. What occurred to me was maybe this was a spiritual event. So this, on the level of 3D, it really happened. Girl fell in love with boy, boy didn't treat her well. Girl lived with boy, boy threw her out. That's what happened in 3D, in this plane. What was starting to occur to me was maybe, and I don't want anybody who's listening to think this is true for them. It's just true for me, which is I wondered at this point, this is like a year into my healing, whether I had actually invited this event into my life to teach me. So again, I don't want anybody else who's had anything bad happen to them think that that's true for them. It's just true for me.
And well, I think it's pretty clear that you're not saying, hey, if something bad has happened to you, it's because you made it happen. It is, I think, often a very useful way of looking at the experiences that we have. Because on some level, we've made the choices that have put us in the places that have where we've experienced what we're experiencing. And we've made the choice to have the attitude that we had as we were going through it. So there's a certain piece of the amount that we suffer and the pain that we endure from something is something that we have chosen and something that we have created. It's something that if we have free will, and I believe that we do, then that some of that was on me, and that's okay. And I think what you're talking about is that there might be a deeper need for you, some part of you that has said, look, I know that this is going to not feel very good, but in order to be the person that you were born to be, you've got to see a new perspective on something. And this is how we're going to do it, because you haven't picked up on it yet. So I have to knock you over the head with something. And yeah, it's not always fun, but it's clear.
Oh, right on. So right on. And what was interesting when I started to have the thought that maybe this was something I had that it was in my book of life, that it was written, rather than, oh, I'm a victim. I realized, this is so weird, I keep notebooks. When I go to classes and things, I have notebooks with me. I have 3 notebooks that I wrote a poem in the inside cover. So it was like for the last 5 years. And the poem is a Rumi poem. Rumi, many people will know, is a 13th century Sufi poet who has found real acceptance in our very now modern era, but he's ancient. And he wrote this poem, and I kept writing it inside my journal, my workbook, where I go to class with. And the poem reads, "Run forward, the way will spring open to you. Be destroyed, you'll be flooded with life. Humble yourself, you'll grow greater than the world. Yourself will be revealed to you without you." So all of a sudden it occurred to me, maybe this aspect of destruction was part of my spiritual path, and I called it in. Now, if that's true, I don't know. It's certainly the attitude and approach that I brought to it at a certain point in my healing, called, oh, I was waiting for this. I knew this was coming. And I also started to have some humor about the whole thing. And I started calling it, and this is catching on with friends of mine, my Humpty Dumpty experience. You know, I couldn't be put back together again the way I was.
And isn't that a blessing?
Oh, yes, sister. So true. Oh my gosh. I left there things I no longer needed. Right. True thing. And I wasn't going to give up a lot of that. I had to be knocked upside the head.
Yes. And well, I think we make it sound a little bit violent while we're talking about it. Like, you have to really drive that lesson in. But I think even more than that, it's like you're going through an entire identity change. And while we're changing who we think we are, we don't always know what we need to let go of in order to step into the next evolution of ourselves. And so having experiences that make it super clear, hey, yeah, this is something that's not working anymore. This is an attitude that you probably want to have a little bit different before you try this again. I think those are really important and really helpful. And having that clear, distinct something is, in my opinion, probably one of the most efficient ways of changing and evolving.
Very efficient, very fast, sometimes hard. So I'm not sure that the world of spirit and the world of people here on earth is different, but it feels different sometimes. There's still the boy-girl story, and then there's the spirit story. And they're the same, but if I think of him, I still think some of the thoughts. And if I think about this as a learning tool, I love it. Like, I'm so great. So one I didn't like and one I'm so grateful for, but they're the same. Blows my mind a little bit. And so I see from that Rumi poem, there was a kind of destruction that took place. And I feel flooded with life. Like maybe I couldn't be this open-hearted, this de-armored, this vulnerable a human had I not had that experience of being destroyed. So I'm not sure that the spiritual path, which I'm on, is always an easy path, but I certainly know I've chosen it. And so this came in and I welcome it because it's the efficient path to growth. Yeah. That act of I forgive you. And it doesn't need to be any different from the way it was. releases the pain. You can, when you get there, it releases the pain and it ennobles the heart. And the heart is the fourth chakra. It's the middle chakra. So our physical in this plane chakra is chakra 1, 2, 3, 4. And then spirit is 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so 4 is in both. It's the mixer. And it's where we balance out who we are as spiritual beings with who we are as human beings. And I think that's the place where I have to honor that what happens to me in the physical is also what happens to me in the spiritual, and that the balancing of my heart and the returning it to its ennobled self is the journey. So it's about being in alignment with the divine. And from that place, you can actually be a magnetic attracting being and start to bring in all of the beauty that you want, because when your heart's cleaned, you're actually resonant with the universe and can attract those things that you want. When your heart is heavy with grief, sadness, pain, and anger, and you haven't released it, you're not vibrating on the level of the universe, and it's challenging to attract the things that you want to bring in. So the end of the story is, I can do that now. There's gratitude, profound gratitude for this journey.
And in that case, if you were going to say something to this person now from this new place of gratitude, what would you say?
I don't know that I need to say anything to them. I have said that already, meaning, and the person is asleep. They do what they do. So I think what's there is for me to say, there's nothing I have to say to him. I don't have to yell at him, and I don't have to appreciate him anymore. My appreciation is in my heart for the journey, not the person. I would say, as much as I think the person operates in shadow and is out of balance, I would say his soul isn't. And I imagine somewhere that his soul and my soul agreed to this before we came into this planet. So to his soul, I would say, thank you.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I think it would be similar, Thanks for being an asshole. I appreciate it. It was very clarifying. And now I have a better understanding of the depth of my own love and my own self-respect.
Yeah, I have some of that too, meaning what I take away is never again will I let that happen. Never again. I am clear on the measure of my worth.
And tell me more about that. What does that mean?
The measure of my worth means what I'm worth, meaning when someone disrespects me, that's actually their right to do that. It's my job to take care of myself. The power lives here inside me. And if I'm being treated in a way that's doesn't meet me as I am, and you break your agreements, do hurtful things, treat me in a way that's unkind, uncompassionate, do things that are betrayal, that's about you. When I let that happen to me, that's about me. That's my job, It's my job to take care of me. My job. My job to say when you're crossing my boundaries. It's my job to draw a line in the sand and to honor myself. But if I betray myself and let someone do that, then it's really more about me than them. That's what I learned. And all the pretty words and all the promises aren't what's there anymore. What's there is what's the real truth? How are you acting? How are you behaving? Do you keep your agreements? Not the promises of big love, and that's words. So that's what I mean by that. Is it different for you? What's the takeaway? You were talking about your work.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I think my experience was different enough that it wasn't that they were treating me poorly. It was the way they were talking about somebody else and the way they had interacted with this other person. And that basically there was a good relationship that had turned sour and they let it turn sour. And I could not understand why the fuck anyone would ever let that happen. And now I know a bit better why someone would let that happen. But I think what really happened for me in this experience was a deeper connection with other women. Because I've always been one to stand up for other women and for my other partners. And if you're going to be talking shit about your partner, we are not going to date. We're probably not even going to be able to have lunch, to be honest. But I don't think I had realized how far I would take that. And it turns out I take that standing up for other women pretty damn far. Like looking at what I've actually done this year and the actions that I've taken. Yeah, there were things that I never thought I would give up that I said goodbye to because it didn't fit into my definition of integrity anymore. And without integrity, we don't have respect. And without respect, that's not a relationship. And yeah, I think that was the new learning that I had, was how far I'm willing to take that.
Beautiful.
And it's neat too, because I think when we have a new learning, whether or not our actions fit our new understanding or not is really the deciding factor of have we learned and have we healed. And for me, I saw 3 different times this year where I made a choice that was very, very different than I would have made before this experience. And now it was so clear to me, I am not going there. That is not happening. So, yeah.
Beautiful takeaway. That's really great. One of my big takeaways is I realized that this, I told you in the beginning, that this somehow got me in touch with some family of origin things too. Very recently, I saw, after I'd healed, how much this man was like my father, who I put on a pedestal. And out of that, so my father, I'll give you an example from my father. When I was in undergraduate school, I was offered a scholarship, but I was told, and I was poor, so I was taking out loans because my parents weren't paying. And I made Dean's List when I got there, and they went, "Hey, you, we want to give you a scholarship." And I went, "Oh, yay, that's good." And they gave me papers that my father needed to fill out. And my father went, "I'm not going to fill out these papers. You're not college material." But he had always said to everyone, "My daughter's in college," all of this stuff. And what I realized is that there was a model of love for me. My father had this big adoration for me. He thought I was wonderful, told everybody I was wonderful. made me promises, didn't keep the promises, and then made them my fault. In other words, we're not going to fill out these papers, not because I'm a lazy asshole or some other reason, but because nobody would give you a scholarship. So I saw that my model of love is big love, throw you under the bus, blame you.
Ouch.
And I went, oh, not a good model. Don't want to do that one again.
Yeah. Well, good for you. I'm really glad that you learned that.
True. Me too. Yeah.
So to wrap this up, we both have had some different experiences of intending what we wanted this year. And I was just curious, do you have anything you'd like to share about new relationships or new experiences that have blossomed in the wake of this healing?
I think the differences are that I do feel as if I can, with this ennobling of the heart and this freedom, this freeing, and seeing my unhealthy model of love that comes from my family of origin and completing that, I'm noticing that I can actually manifest anything with ease. If I say I want something, it shows up. So I'm manifesting with ease, probably because I'm vibrating on a different level. I'm also completing things. I stopped doing some work that I was doing, watched other consulting work come in, working with couples in a new, so I'm seeing shifts, but mostly I feel like I'm in my own circle of power. Instead of looking to someone outside myself to validate me, I've taken my power back. And feeling that and using that in service to others. So, I know what else. Ha! So a few years ago, although I took refuge as a Buddhist, and this year, during this, struggling or being challenged by forgiveness, I took vows to be a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva in the Buddhist tradition is someone who gets off the path of enlightenment to help other people and be in service to others and on their path. So obviously everything that showed up was not bodhisattva. It becomes not about you, but the work is about you and all the ways that you can continue to heal and serve. So I'm on the path. My practice has grown in terms of working with couples, healing others, and I continue to deepen my own healing because the more I can heal, the more I can be of service to others. So that's what I see as the spiritual part of it. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So I think the thing I would like to do, if you're okay with it, is I'm feeling, and it's okay if you don't want to do this, but I'm feeling the wish to end in a little 90-second meditation.
Okay.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel all right about that?
I feel great about that. Are you going to lead it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a love and compassion prayer meditation, which feels appropriate given we're talking about the freedom of forgiveness. So let's sit comfortably with our spine straight and imagining the world and all the people in the world most of whom we don't know, some of whom we know and love and who love us back, some we know and we're neutral to, and they're neutral to us, some we're not in alignment with. Include yourself in the world, and if you feel comfortable, include those people who have wounded you, betrayed you, wronged you, but only if you feel ready. If not, leave them out of the people in the world for now. Imagine the entire globe of everyone you've included as a ball, and you can hold the ball in your hands. Everyone on this planet, good and bad, wants to know happiness and be from suffering. Breathe in, sending warm wishes to all living beings on the globe who, like you, want to be happy, and think the thought, may you live with ease, may you be happy, may you be free from pain. Breathe out your sadness, your anger, and your grief. Breathe in, again, holding your globe. And think, just as I wish to, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live with ease and happiness. And breathe out your sadness, your anger, and your grief. And so we give away all the merit we have created in our conversation today to all sentient beings who can benefit from our blessing. It is we give away in the spirit of love and compassion. And may we all continue to heal and feel compassion and love, mostly for ourselves. Yeah.
That was lovely.
Yes.
Thank you, Elle. If you resonate with her and you would like to connect and hear more and have a bigger opening for yourself, then her information will be in the show notes. And Elle, what's your website?
www.essence-love.com.
essence-love.com. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the show on Pleasure Central Radio, Elle. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Rebecca. It was a joy to be with you, to talk to your audience, and to talk about the freedom of forgiveness. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
My pleasure.
That was awesome.
Wasn't that cool?
Well done. That last piece with the prayer, that 90-second meditation, that is worth bookmarking right there and listening to on a daily basis. And I know that some of the podcast episodes, they delete that. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of the podcast apps, once you listen to it, it'll go away. But on my website, pleasurecentralradio.com, it will always be there for you.
That was a tease.
No. This is a tease.
Oh. So yeah, definitely do that, because that's a great little way to kind of center and bring everything back. I think that was a really nice way to end it. And another really cool thing is there is a follow-up episode, kind of a follow-up episode coming out very shortly.
Yeah, now that we've talked about breakups and forgiveness and gotten your heart ready to move forward, I hope, we can talk a little bit more about how to move forward in a way that is working smarter, not harder.
Ooh, how would I do that?
Well, when you're clear on what really matters to you, you and I know this, when you're clear on what matters to you, then it is much easier for you to recognize it when you see it.
Right.
And so I have an episode that I've been holding on to for a little while that I did with Wendy Newman. It's called The Partner Have to Haves, where I talk with Wendy about a digital workshop that she put out this year. And you essentially go through and you make a list. It's a workbook and a set of audio and videos that you listen to together. And she takes you through this workbook and process of getting really, really clear on what matters to you most in a relationship. What kinds of things do your future partner or partners absolutely have to have? What would be nice and what doesn't really matter to you at all?
That sounds very exciting. Clarity is one of my things. I love clarity, so I'm excited to listen to the episode.
I love clarity too. And I'm excited for you because I did this entire workshop in the summer and I have a very different life now with the partners that I have around me, and it's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Rebecca, you are truly radiant.
Thank you very much. I work hard on it.
And thank you for this episode. And Elle, thank you for your participation in this as well. And I am looking forward to the next one.
I am too. Can't wait. I'll see you there.
Thanks for listening to Pleasure Central Radio, hosted by Rebecca Beltran. The co-host for this episode is Sean. The guest today was Elle Price. Elle is a Tantra practitioner, a student of shamanism, and a Bodhisattva. Technical production by me, Katerina, with advice from our podcast consultant, Sandy Waters. Rebecca gets significant creative feedback from her beta listener group. For this episode, special thanks goes to Sean, Vel, Josh, and Bob. And to anyone else we might have missed, you are loved. We look forward to your company on the next episode. Ciao.